Okay, what if I told you it's a mascot horror
No, wait, come back!
mixed with Squid Games
No, wait, come back!
with genuinely fun parkour gameplay?
Wait, come back!
Finding Frankie is a 2024 mascot horror parkour game where you are trapped in an abandoned indoor theme park turned death game. Your goal is to survive and complete parkour challenges in order to win a life-changing amount of money. While we learn very little about our playable character, we flesh out and gain backstory on the tired mascot characters and their dying game show. Atypical of its genre, the game doesn't dwell much on horror, shocking twists, or unsolved mysteries. There's no ghosts or dead kids or any equivalent to the Bite of 87. No, instead, this humble 2-ish hour experience focuses first and foremost on fun gameplay and interesting set pieces. Honestly, it's a nice change of pace, and proof that the horror mascot genre is still salvageable and, somehow, still mostly unexplored. This was the part where I was planning to explain what exactly a mascot horror game is, and the history of the genre, but it's not like the genre is dead or even going anywhere. So, at the threat of stating the obvious, I'll keep it brief. It's horror that focuses on fantastical monsters that often resemble children's characters. It was popularized by the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, and despite the first game being a high-tension management sim with genuinely creepy designs, the genre has since become stagnant, with walking sim gameplay, child-friendly designs, poorly written and increasingly ridiculous stories, what is best described as YouTuber bait, and a distinctive slot problem. That's kind of why I want to draw attention to Finding Frankie. I see it not only as a unique entry in the genre, but a genuine hope for its future after it gets past these alarmingly bad growing pains. But first, before we begin proper, the disclaimers. I like reviews that feel like you played the game along with the reviewer. I will be giving full but mostly linear spoilers. This game is not very long, and there is surprisingly little in the way of mystery, at least compared to others in the genre. But there are still story beats and hypothetical twists to keep things engaging on the story level, and I won't hold back on giving those away. I do recommend this game. But I will also say that there is little lost in having the story spoiled for you. Most of the fun is in the gameplay, which is still intact even in repeat playthroughs. And if you're still here, let's jump right in. Quick appreciation for the main menu. It depicts a contestant trapped on a platform awaiting his doom. His fellow contestants are already dead. Frankie is right behind him, slowly stretching up. All this, plus the music, is an excellent way to set the tone of the game. The cherry on top, though, is that if you hover over the play button, the contestant will beg you not to click it, and if you hover over the quit button, he will greatly agree with your decision. The whole thing is great, and I love the attention to detail. Anyway, let's begin proper. We open in on a particular box of a particular brand of cereal. Seems pretty straightforward, though I can't help but think that this is begging for random kids to end up with invitation tapes. And on that note, despite what a few other review videos have said, we are probably not playing as a child ourselves or even as a teenager. Not only is the player old enough to actively apply for the death game, but it's later revealed that we live alone in an apartment. I really don't know where the idea that we play as a kid came from. After all, how would a kid know about a dark web snuff reality game show? They ain't exactly teaching about Tor browsers in elementary school. It is notable that unlike most death games, all the contestants are present 100% willingly, and that there is even a layer of RNG that they have to beat. I mean, I feel a box with a VHS tape would weigh more than just cereal, and the opening cutscene is unclear if the VHS boxes are signed or not. But the fact remains that all of the contestants had to go out of their way to be here. I actually really like this, as not only would volunteers be easy to find in a realistic setting, but it removes a lot of moral hang-ups, plot holes, and questions that most other death games have to spend time addressing. For example, why is our character completely on board with all of the actions we're about to perform? Because we're here willingly. That simple. I like it.
If you're watching this video, it's your lucky day! 4 lucky people from around the world have been brought here to the world's largest indoor trampoline, water, and parkour park. With over 3 stories of action-packed parkour obstacle courses, this is going to be a game show you won't ever forget. Did I also mention there's a little prize for our lucky winner?
We have a little area to adjust our settings and get a feel for the game. On the wall is a brief introduction to most of our mascots for this evening, and opposite of that is a not entirely useless map. We'll talk about each of the mascots in due time, as their informed personalities don't exactly match their actual personalities. When ready, grab our outfit, which we were already wearing prior to picking up, and head out to the starting places with the other contestants. Oh, good thing we didn't cheat. Not that it would let us. What's extra funny is that if you watch the remaining guys we left behind, one gets grabbed by Frankie and held up for inspection, and the other just backs up into the prep room. We're not allowed to follow him though. If you are still in the starting area when the shutters close, you're a dead man. If we run forward while we can though, the shutter closes behind us and separates us from the early carnage. Welcome to Finding Frankie. Once safely in the hallway, we can take an immediate turn to an optional tutorial. We don't get anything out of completing it save for an achievement, but it's a nice warm-up and it's good to cover all our parkour abilities before being set loose proper. Speaking of abilities, we have a fairly simple but versatile movement set. Of course, we have the basics: walk, sprint, jump, etc. Sprinting into doors and similar obstacles will kick them open. Jumping against short walls or fences will make you vault over them. If you crouch while sprinting, you'll dive into a short slide. A funny quirk is that if you hold down the sprint button, even when standing still, the camera will zoom out and head bob as if you were running. In other words, you have a dedicated head bob button. Saw blades, rotating objects, and trampolines will all do as you'd expect. You can wall jump, but only with the help of wall-mounted trampolines. No Mario-style wall jumping exploits here. There's no fall damage, which is nice considering how many multi-story drops will survive no issue. We can grind on gravity-defying rails, which is weird but fun in a first-person game. We don't have health, and all deaths are insta-kills. The thing that gives me the most grief when I play this game is the swinging mechanic. When there are select bars, we can grab onto them mid-leap by holding down the grab button and then swing off by releasing it. The hypothetical is a great idea to keep movement flowing and immersive, but in practice it very often didn't work for me. It's probably my own fault, but in my 3 or so playthroughs it failed often enough that I should mention it here. Thankfully it doesn't come up as often as other obstacles. It isn't introduced here, but most of our challenges will be marked by a series of buttons. All the buttons in a circuit must be pressed in a short amount of time to activate the associated item or open a specific door. These buttons don't have to be pressed in a specific order, so if you find a circuit difficult to complete in time, feel free to experiment with button order. The optimal route is usually easy to work out. I overall really like the movement set, and it's not since Mirror's Edge that I've enjoyed virtual parkour this much. I think it helps that it doesn't bother with being realistic with things like rolling or falling damage. Not only that, but there is little punishment or slowdown for dying, so you're back into the action almost immediately. Death places you back to the beginning of whatever section you are on. While that does greatly lower the difficulty of the gameplay, the game as a whole is a Saturday afternoon casual type of affair anyway, thanks to the short length. What's really nice is that all of our moves will be used throughout the game, and fairly often too. Once secure in our movement skills, we can hop over the exit fence and return to the previous hallway. At the end of the hall is what seems to be the previous front entrance of the park. Yeah, it seems that prior to this place being the arena of a death game, it was a children's indoor amusement park, and these were the party check-in counters. Speaking of parties, we get an update on the loudspeaker regarding our fellow contestants.
Dear lucky contestant, it seems the other competitors have mysteriously died. Not sure how that happened, but oh well, you're still here. Frankie doesn't feel like himself today. He normally doesn't go on mass murdering sprees, but don't worry about that, lucky contestant. We can still make this a fun, PG-rated adventure. Maybe his best friend, Henry Hotline, knows what's gotten into him. You should give him a visit. His room is right upstairs.
Well, that was fast. Too fast. Down to one contestant minutes after the starting bell? That can't make good entertainment. Well, believe it or not, that is plot relevant and will be addressed a bit later. Either way, that's not a bad thing for us. Now we don't have to worry about the competition turning this into a race. Actually, that's kind of a missed opportunity from a gameplay and set piece perspective. Idea for the sequel? Anyway, this entrance gives us a good look at several versions of Frankie's child-friendly design, including a not-so-child-friendly billboard threatening to eat your children. We'll learn more about Frankie later though. The realistic children's climbing area is closed off for now, so just focus on the 3-circuit switch behind the desk and near the shoe cubbies. Try not to make eye contact with the creepy weirdo watching you from the shadows. Seriously, it was a when you see it you'll shit bricks moment when I checked the footage for this review. I'll explain that later on too though. The circuit opens up a back room behind the desk. Back here are a lot of locked doors leading to future areas, but that's because the game is very backtracker friendly, and these are mostly where future levels connect into this one. The only thing we need to do here right now is flip this lever, which will open up the children's background back out front. That itself has its own circuit line, which will open up the shutters into the next room. Yeah, from now on, the rooms were obviously modified by the showrunners. This room is still bright and full of whimsy, but if you touch the highlighted ground, Frankie will spawn in. When Frankie is in search mode, you can hide from him. It's difficult to guess what he can and can't see, but if you successfully stay out of his line of sight, he'll despawn. The problem is that, depending on where you hid, you might immediately respawn Frankie back into the room. So, the only way to save yourself if you touch a spawning floor is to hide on a safe platform and break his line of sight until he gives up. This is definitely more difficult than it sounds, and it's definitely better to follow the rules and avoid these off-limit areas. The spawning floors themselves are actually rather rare and are only present in a few obstacle rooms. They are quickly traded out for instant death falls and the like, so enjoy being found by Frankie while you can, at least until the chase scenes later. Anyway, our goal is to make it to the top of the room where the exit is. There are no time limits, and outside of the Frankie floors, there's no danger either. We're still just warming up after all. We exit out into the second floor lobby. This was once the rest area outside of connections with Henry Hotline, but now it's the site of a bloodbath. Despite there only being 3 to 4 contestants, including ourselves, there are many bloody corpses of contestants strewn about. Crushed underfoot, slumped over fences. Get used to seeing bodies. Stopping to look will only slow you down. Going from the corpses and horror movie graffiti, Henry isn't taking callers anymore. I'm honestly not sure what Connections with Henry Hotline was meant to be. A sign says the guests have a chance to ask him a question on his late night show, but Henry is... well, I doubt he has a real late night show, to put it nicely. The sign also says you can visit his museum, or his, quote, Henry household on the lower floor. Honestly, I still can't imagine what Henry and his show was back before the death game, especially considering what we see later. But it doesn't really matter anymore anyway. Messing with the phones yields nothing notable, so our dude gives up on trying to get in through the front entrance and instead opts to duck into the giant vent, which is opened with a circuit and has a big arrow sign pointing towards it. I've heard of signposting, but this is ridiculous! The vent drops us out not far away into a supply closet. Up next is another small obstacle. Oh, God, my eyes! This, back rooms hall has been converted into another small obstacle course. We're still taking it slow. This game is very good about giving the player plenty of practice before any difficult challenges are presented. What's funny is that this hall is a fairly realistic course, just a standard hallway that's been converted by putting up boards. Feels like something bored teenagers would make in the back of a church or something like that. We were hypothetically supposed to be racing our fellow contestants still though, if they hadn't all died so quickly. So simple early courses like this are surprisingly diegetic. Quick circuit down through the hall to open up the next vent. Hey, since the game intends for us to use the vents for navigation, what's to stop contestants from using them to cheat? Oh. Interesting. The showrunners are letting us live, at least for now. Makes sense, really, as the show would end prematurely if the last contestant standing died so early. Hell, we're just getting started. We're free to travel the vents, and despite the creepy atmosphere, we reach the exit without any further harassment. We're in the back rooms still, and going from a map nearby, we are either in the unmarked area in the northwest section of the building, or we are off the map entirely. The room is dark, and several bodies litter the floor. A particular button blinks in the darkness, calling us. Remember, Frankie loves you. Frankie has changed his mind and is on the chase. This scene is when I knew this game was going to be good. Frankie is chasing us through a particularly harsh gauntlet. This is a major difficulty spike, and is the big sink or swim moment of the game. There is room for error, but if you don't correct yourself quickly, you won't make it through. The moment the button is pressed, you got to bail. Slide down the stair railing, press all 6 buttons to open up the shutters, vault over railings to round a corner, open another 2-circuit door, use a ramp to leap and grab a high-placed button to open another shutter, slide under a bar, placing you way too close to Frankie. Vault or slide past several bars in a hallway, including one trick bar, and then you have to pass over this Fall Guys ass rotating column thing. Smash through the correct doors, avoiding the chained up ones, fall down a hole, get to the end of another obstacle-filled wall, use the wall trampoline to jump onto a giant fan and use that to get you back up to the upper level, where you can hit another circuit, opening up another room to... What the hell is this? Whatever, hop over the logs, or just run around them to the top of the ramp, hit the switch to open the way to the giant fun tubes, pick any of them, and jump.
Lucky contestant! Thank goodness you're all right. That sure was a close one. I apologize, that was poorly planned on my part, but it was certainly entertaining. You know what? This is actually a good thing. Deputy Duck's area isn't too far from here.
And safe. Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Give me more of that. The first chase's spike in both intensity and difficulty really elevates the game. Up until then, the game was very slow and very forgiving, but once that chase begins, the gloves are off. A first-time player will undoubtedly die several times, as a lot of precise movements and actions are demanded of you. Still, at no point does it feel particularly unfair. The trick bar and Fall Guys bridge over a bottomless pit might be frustrating to new players, but there is a palpable sense of learning the game and getting better with each try. The only place that I feel might be unfair is the wonkiness of the giant fan elevator, but as long as you approach it without panicking, you'll likely make it through in one go. The log rolling hill at the end is also worth appreciating. You feel like you're about to reach the end, and then you're greeted with this fresh hell. It doesn't last long, and the true end to the sequence is immediately after it. But that moment of realizing you're not done yet is still great during this high-stress scene. And the best part is, most of this was a tutorial. Not only was this our first real test of what we've learned so far, but many of the new obstacles we've just encountered were simplified versions of challenges we'll come across later. Genuinely, well done. The tubes have spit us out at what seems to have once been the cafeteria. Special shout out to Deputy Duck's Quack Shack. Old menus, chairs, and tables mark the room, but outside of a place to catch our breath, there isn't much of interest here. Up some construction scaffolding and up on top of the ventilation is the circuit to the exit. You are clearly meant to start on the ground floor and bounce up to the higher buttons, but you'll quickly find that the Mad Pro Gamer Strat TM on these circuits is to start with the hardest button whenever possible. Down a few obstacle and body-filled halls, and we reach not only a connection point between here and the building front entrance, but also Deputy Duck's parkour room. This room is much easier and more chill than the previous chase sequence, assumably so the player has a space to cool down while having fun. The room is bright and colorful, with happy, bubbly music playing quietly from distant speakers. There are little duck statues that shoot small plastic balls at us. These balls are, surprisingly, completely harmless to us. They can even be bounced back into the duck's mouth, causing them to choke. If you gag them enough times, they'll freak out and start spewing out a ton of balls before deactivating. The only danger in the room is easy to avoid Frankie floors. There is even a point where a giant duck launches a giant ball at you, but it just harmlessly bounces off you, and it can even be rolled around in the limited space where it intersects with your path. This area does introduce a few new concepts, such as spinning and teeter-totter platforms, but if you've played any platforming game ever, then you should already know how they work. We take the modified course up and out to the upstairs balcony. We get a quick reminder that we're in a horror game. Wait, these windows were not on the other side. Huh. Magic windows aside, we reach Deputy Duck's police station. Okay. You're my friend now. Deputy Duck is less of a mascot and more of a legitimate working tool. I can't even begin to imagine how this would all work as a theme park exhibit. The jail itself was probably something like those fake jails several places have. They mainly serve as photo spots, but the kids often have fun role-playing. But what about Deputy Duck himself? Were there multiple ducks back in the day? Did this small space need reservations beforehand? What the hell was his monitor used for? Again, it doesn't really matter, but I genuinely think the mascot robots were likely invented after the original park closed. Anyway, I wasn't kidding when I said the duck was more a friendly tool than a mascot. He has two major functions, a literal flashlight and a radar. The light, while useful, will only flash a millisecond, turning the light system into a camera shutter horror trope in the best way. I like this over a regular flashlight for scare factor reasons, and while impractical, I think more horror games should experiment with non-traditional portable light sources. The radar is far more useful, but more for the area immediately after this than any other part of the game. The radar is slow and radiates outward, but it highlights important and collectible items and doors. It does not highlight enemies, so it's far from overpowered, but if you are ever feeling lost, it can save your skin. As I said, it will be very useful in the next area we visit. For now, the radar will open up the shutter leading to the entrance of Henry Hotline's area. The Hiding Henry section of the game is a notable change of pace, and ironically it stands out by being more typical of the horror mascot genre. Starting off, we've been locked out of the area by yet another shutter, and we are provided with yet another vent, with yet another big arrow pointing to it. This time, we travel the vent without any major mishaps, though a brief use of Deputy Duck's radar is required to move forward. They are definitely making sure we understand how to use it. We come out to a night-themed hall with a singular telephone in it. The previous phones didn't really do anything, but we might as well give this one a try.
Who keeps ringing this phone? I'm sick of it! The ringing, it won't stop! It never stops! You did this to me! It hurts!
Doesn't exactly resemble his pictures, does he? Following him, we are placed into a grid-like maze. We can wander around safely at this point and try to get a lay of the land. Ringing another telephone, however, will spawn in Henry, and he's pissed. While you could just sprint like mad and slap the remaining phones as fast as you can, I wouldn't recommend it. There is a lot of methods you can use here to make this section easier on you. While Henry is faster than you can hear him coming from a long ways away, thanks to him apparently weighing a ton and having the footsteps to match. While Deputy Duck cannot see enemies with his radar, he can highlight the remaining phones through the walls. I already mentioned that you can scout out the area before activating Henry, but there is also a safe room in the back that you can slide into. He cannot reach you here, and it's the only safe, reliable way to break off his chase. That in mind, a phone and the final exit opening switch are also in this room. So your goal is to ring all of the phones, dive into the safe room, flip the exit switch, and get to the exit all without Henry grabbing you. Sounds easy enough. This is usually the single longest section for me whenever I play, but honestly, it's not too bad. The exit out of the area is a grungy tunnel straight out of Coraline. chase time. Despite appearing similar to Frankie's chase scene, playing through Henry's chase is a notably different experience. For one, while Frankie's chase has a little room for error, assuming you corrected yourself quickly, Henry's chase doesn't really have any time to spare thanks to larger distances you have to cover. Henry is slower than Frankie, or at least he seems to be, but he'll teleport to catch up with you way more often. This and the lower number of obstacles to slow him down makes him functionally harder than Frankie. Speaking of, keep an eye out for Frankie's. This chase takes us through the Coraline Tunnel as Henry destroys it around us. Over a broken dip in the floor, up a ramp, down some stair rails, under a fenced off room, over a couple more obstacles, past construction equipment, through the "look what I did" room, under a shutter to a 4-circuit door and into the safety of the bathroom. That last circuit set in particular is probably what will get ya. Either way, if you listen closely, you can hear Henry talking to Frankie. Once you've caught your breath, use the vent to move on. It's a short tunnel that drops us off in the immediately active Frankie's Crash Course. It's Hole in the Wall! Woo! Simply jump over and around obstacles as they zoom towards you at increasing speeds. If you fail to get out of the way, they'll push you right into the wall of saw blades. Isn't that fun? Legit though, I like this section, and it's so quick that it doesn't become impossible or overstay its welcome. The dead Frankie cutouts in particular make me chuckle. I prefer to straddle 2 different rows so I can quickly strafe between obstacles. If you get hit, you have time to correct yourself, even on the fastest setting. Still, you'll be thankful when the ride stops at the end. I got confused on where to go from here the first time I played, but what you want to do is jump into the gap in front of the timer to move on. Funny, because jumping down there counts as a death if you do it too early. Oh well, Frankie doesn't like cheaters. Welcome to the Utilidors. Huh, I thought Disney copyrighted that word. Anyway, the utility corridors are a series of underground tunnels that allow staff to quickly move around the park. This is hypothetically how Frankies are able to keep up with us as we travel throughout the building. From a gameplay perspective, this will serve as a loose hub area for the latter half of the game. In addition to the future locations, the tunnels can be used to return to the front entrance, food court, and Deputy Duck areas, which will be very useful later if you decide to check out the post-game Easter eggs. For now, though, we don't really need them. Following the purple glowing cords will take us to the Incinerator, which is better described as a big fiery death pit. Toy Story 3 vibes. There are trampolines around to hypothetically save yourself with, but it never really worked for me. There are several rails traveling over and around the pit, and a circuit connected to it. This whole area will be addressed later, so let's head back up to where we were. The orange glowing cord will take us to the entrance of Frankie's Frosted Peak, and yes, I know how it sounds. Either way, it's closed for now, so let's head back towards the only way we can go right now.
You're our lucky contestant. No one has ever made it this far. Usually only mere seconds. If you're lucky, a minute or 2. They play easy. They pity you. The only reason the ones above decided to keep you around is because you're boosting the ratings. Our viewers are entertained. We aren't going bankrupt, and this isn't our last game show. As soon as you're eliminated, 4 new cereal boxes will be sent out all around the world, sitting and waiting for its lucky contestant, just like you. I have something to give you as a token of my appreciation for bringing us into the light again. And
not for you, higher-ups probably would have instructed Frankie to kill me. I'm not sure if he still works or not. Hello?
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Ooh, I know he broke the rules, but that's quite the grisly death. Speaking of grisly... Oh, Deputy Duck has seen better days. He still works exactly the same as before, but now he puts off a continuous series of staticky, jittery robot noises. If robots could feel pain, I would put him out of his misery. We still have things to do and places to explore, though. Wait, what?
Lucky contestant! What a surprise! Don't worry your mask-covered head. I'm the real Frankie, and totally not a lazily written plot device to add a twist to the story to keep our viewers entertained so we can avoid going bankrupt.
Authorities have discovered 3 dead bodies on the premises of Frankie's Parkour Palace, who seem to be 3 of the 4 unfortunate contestants chosen to participate in the company's last game show before bankruptcy. 1 contestant seems to still be on the premises and potentially alone.
Well, now that pleasantries have been exchanged, you have a journey to continue. I'll set you on your path. Go towards the last remaining elevators and I'll guide you from there.
Yeah, a lot to unpack here. Remember when I said Frankie's in the plural? Or told you to ignore the weirdo watching you at the entrance? Either way, good Frankie, as I'll be calling him, is at least for now sorta kinda on our side. Using the tunnels, we can head on over to the elevators leading up to the trampoline and water parks. However, they are shuttered down and unusable. The only entrance that is now open to us is an insane drop into the building's wastewater management center. Well, since there's only one way to go... It's notably more traditional horror in terms of setting down here. Thankfully, we can still use Deputy Duck and his literal flashlight regardless of how not waterproof he looks right now. And we'll need him too, as it's definitely darker down here than most other areas of the game. Oh, and we definitely have hepatitis. Not far in, we'll find a small room up a small flight of stairs. Here, we can hit the circuit buttons, opening up the water and trampoline parks. The exit door leading to dry land is locked, so we have no choice but to head back into the water. Oh, that's surprisingly nice of him. I guess us slowly dying of infection down here wouldn't make good television. The next room has our exit, but first we must open it with a circuit. Said circuit is spread across the room, and Bad Frankie is hunting us from the ceiling. Good news is that this section is very easy and has multiple valid strategies. First off, the hand is slow moving and on a set path, so you can easily sprint around it to the switches and back. Second, if you are crouching, the hand cannot get you. Frankie can even brush you with his fingers under the water, but as long as you stay crouched, you're good. And crouch as much and as long as you want, by the way. There's no running out of breath or anything like that. In fact, outside of moving way slower, the water has no significant gameplay effects. Finally, if you take long enough crouching or just sticking to a far corner, the hand will despawn after finishing its path. Whatever method you go with, the doorway out leads to the most powerful trampoline to defy physics. Make sure to get off at the top, by the way, as you can easily fall back down to the lower floor. We appear to be in a layer between the incinerator and the ground floor, as we can see the trash being processed. I guess that means the cleanup crew is already getting to work. Either way, we can use a fallen vent piece to pass the garbage and drop down a hole back into the utility corridors. Meeting back up with Frankie in the security room won't get us any attention or dialogue. In fact, Frankie isn't wet or dirty from being in the sewers. Following our objectives though, we head back to the newly opened elevators. We now have a choice here on where to go first, the water park or the trampoline park. Let's go to the water park first. Oh, that's a nice way to cover up the loading section. Okay, before I get into the details of this room, I have to point out the one thing I really hate about it. There is audio popping in this room. I don't know if it's from the soundtrack or the sound effects. Maybe it's the fans. Maybe it's the saw blades. But every minute or so is a clear as day and hard to ignore audio pop. I was kind of hoping this would get fixed in an update or something, since some minor performance issues I had during my Let's Play was patched out by the time I got to working on this review. But I'm sad to say the popping was still there when I recorded the new footage. I feel kind of bad pointing it out, but here's to hoping they fix it in a future patch. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's address the room itself. There are 3 circuits in this room. First is a 5-button circuit in the playground area. Using trampolines and the rail near the entrance, you need to sprint around the maze-like structure to get all the buttons in time. If you start at the second highest button, the one near the water dump bucket, you get a good view of 2 more buttons, and the rail up to the highest button is a small hop away. Starting at that bucket button, using the rail to grab the highest button, and then leaping to the 2 previously shown buttons will take care of nearly the entire circuit with minimum wandering around. Completing this circuit starts one of the giant fans on the floor, allowing you to complete the second circuit of the room. The second circuit is only 2 buttons, each reachable by their respective giant fans. One is up on the ventilation tubes and the other is simply on the ceiling. This starts up the final set of fans in the room. So this last circuit is where the danger lies. There is a shit ton of deadly saw blades on the ceiling, and if you're not careful, you'll be blown right into them by the fans. Good news is that there is a couple boards on the ceiling to hit safely, and from there you could take one of 2 paths. There's the easy path, which drops you down on some vents where you can use a swing bar to get to a series of wall jumps with a final switch at the end. Alternatively, you can take what I call the stupid route. You have a thin path of safety between the saw blades, and you have to carefully navigate it to the other side. From that platform, you just have to walk to the end to reach the final lever. The difficulty of the paths are completely different, and I can see where the saw blades might have been deemed too difficult for journalists. That in mind, I did that route in one try. You only need to complete one route, and hitting a final switch will disable the other. Hitting a switch will lower this giant box of cereal, on which is one of multiple keys needed to unlock Frankie's Frosted Peak. Once we got what we came for, we head on back to the elevators and this time head to the trampoline park. Oh, this is a notably smaller and more realistic environment than what I was expecting. Once ready, ignore the whole of secret lore that sorta conflicts with the final game's story, and flip the switch. This starts a challenge mode. Using the trampolines, we need to hop through 3 rings before a time limit runs out. The trampolines can get unwieldy, so making use of the non-trampoline spaces to orient yourself will go a long way to speeding up your time. After we go through the rings, we'll get a new objective. What the fuck is a noob? Holy shit! They're perfect! How did you know? I love them. I love them so much. After the genuine joy that is the exploding noobs, the challenge switches back to hopping through rings, this time with a shorter timer. After is another round of noobs, and you get the idea. There are 3 rounds of rings and noobs each, and the final reward is another giant cereal box with a key on it. Grab the key and head on back through the elevators. Okay, so now we have 2 keys to Frankie's Frosted Peak. However, we still can't get in as the entrance is shuttered. Well, remember the Incinerator? The big fiery death pit? The one with a purple cord connecting it to the shutter? Well, there are several rails going up and around it, and each of these rails lead to a corner of the room. Near the rail's output are buttons to a single circuit, and using the rails will allow us to hit all the buttons in time. There is one big catch though. One of the buttons is in the center of the room, and the only way to get to it is a rail that starts in the security room. So many architectural questions. But who cares? You can complete this circuit as early as right after you meet Good Frankie, and the reward is to open up the entrance to Frankie's Frosted Peak, though the keys are still needed to enter the door itself. To either side are feeds of the live chat, all anonymous, of course. It seems the viewer feedback is very positive, which is good for your survival. Speaking of, there are a ton of bodies here, solidifying how close to the end we are. The door to the peak itself is locked, requiring 2 keys. We already got those though, so when ready, just waltz right in. Just past a small area and we'll get a great view of the grand parkour challenge of this game, Frankie's Frosted Peak. This several stories high obstacle course employs challenges both old and new. Feel free to explore the surprisingly well-detailed lobby. Reminds me of the Gaylord Texan during their ice sculpture season. There's a few secrets and similar interesting things in this room, but we'll get to those later, as the show must go on. When ready, kick open the gate and run. The moment the music changes, the time becomes limited as the massive room starts flooding with... Actually, I don't know what. Liquid bubblegum? Pepto-Bismol? A commenter on the live feed calls it lava. Whatever it is, we'll drown in it if it touches us. So, move quick as you scale the mountain. Some familiar obstacles, such as the breakable doors, teeter-totters, and spinning column return. Pro tip, unlike literally every other spinning column in the game, you can crouch or slide under the fence-like bars that line each segment. It'll save you a lot of time, but doing so bears the risk of getting trapped under one if you time it wrong. There are a few new obstacles as well. First are these giant punching gloves. Hard to miss. Needless to say, if they hit you, they send you flying right into the pink muck. Best to play it safe and time them properly. The other obstacle is way worse in my opinion. Bumpers. Pinball-style bumpers that bounce you around. Regardless of what angle you approach them, they always seem to bounce you back down the hill, or worse yet, into other bumpers so you get tag-teamed all the way down. It's really easy to end up in a brief stun lock thanks to these things, and while it rarely lasts long, it can easily eat up enough time for the goo to catch up. Thankfully, they're not used very much, but if you keep trying and start to learn the course, you'll reach the circuit with some time to spare. Woo! Take a moment to breathe. But we aren't quite done yet. Despite technically being between different exhibits, we are faced with a new challenge. A spinning column over a bottomless pit framed by buzzing chainsaws. I wouldn't blame someone for having more trouble here than on the mountain, especially since you can no longer duck under the fence-like pieces. Once through, we come across the final hall. Posters commemorating the many seasons of the game line the walls, and it isn't even close to being all of them. A couple long hallways, and we see the entrance to the final challenge, Hexa-Havoc. Well, to be fair, it was literally written on a whiteboard that we would be betrayed at this point.
One last place to go, lucky contestant.
Here we go! My favorite part of the game, Hexa-Havoc. I would gladly play a whole game that was nothing but this, especially if it also had this kick-ass dubstep soundtrack. Okay, so the gameplay here is fairly simple. There are several layers of hexagon tiles. If you step on a tile, it will become highlighted, and after a few seconds, it will fall away. Your goal is to wait out the timer, and then hit one of the two switches on the last layer of tiles. To add challenge to this, Frankie will be on the board with you. He'll try his best to get you, and even with sliding to help keep speed, he'll likely be right on your ass the majority of the time. He'll occasionally jump to a new location. Ideally, he'll jump right in front of you to force a directional change. But if that's not available, he'll settle for any tile island large enough to support him. Using this, you can buy yourself time by stopping and maxing out the time you spend on the individual tiles of a particularly thin tile island. If you're extra lucky, Frankie will get separated from you by an entire layer, which will usually take a bit to correct. If you're extra unlucky, his pathfinding will get confused and he'll jump literally on top of you. Thankfully, there is a generous cooldown before he attacks, and you'll have a fair amount of time to bail the scene before he becomes a threat. Most Frankie-related deaths here, for me at least, was from me thinking I could slide past him, and either underestimating his reach or overestimating my slide distance. In addition to Frankie, the game will spawn in noobs across the board. This time they'll explode after a second or two without being interacted with, and in doing so will highlight any nearby hexagons. The range isn't too bad, but the end result is that the board will quickly become filled with holes, ruining any careful tile management you were trying to do. With all this going on, Hexa-Havoc is appropriately difficult, and with the dubstep added, you'll likely get a nice gamer-flavored adrenaline boost from the whole thing. And yes, that final dive for the lever feels great. We are also rewarded with one hell of an ending. When we regain control, we are in a dark room with nothing but a sliver of light to guide us forward.
As promised, $5 million in cash. You're the first contestant we've ever had who won. Hundreds of people last a few seconds. A few last a couple of minutes. But you're different. I like that. But let's be honest with ourselves for a second, contestant. We need each other. Especially you. I mean, look where you live. And you've helped us. Having a privately streamed and funded show isn't the easiest thing in the world. And then, on the verge of bankruptcy, you came along. Our star. But stars don't just leave after a season, do they?
An ending. Leaves satisfying but also open to a sequel. No dead kids or open mysteries required, just a nice, morally gray but logical ending where everyone scratches each other's backs. Speaking of, these credits deserve a proper look. The text of the credits appears on 2 rotating bars, one that requires we duck and another that we jump. If we fail to dodge, we'll be sent flying off the platform. It'll start slow and speed up over time, and by the time it fades to black, it'll be tossing you off the platform over and over like a rag doll. All this plus the music that plays here, which is lighthearted but seeped in hidden maliciousness, creates a genuinely fun section out of the credits of all things. I love it, and it leaves everything on such a fun note. And that was Finding Frankie. Let's look at the graphics real quick. They're fairly serviceable. The realistic look brings out the colorful sections in a surprisingly good way. You know that look theme parks have in person? Seeing all the decor and such emulate cartoons? But then real life adds a layer of texture and lighting that ruins the 2D illusion? Well, that's captured very well in this game. The sense of things trying and failing to look kid-friendly, only to be thrown away entirely when you enter any backroom area. It was probably mostly unintentional, but I really like it, and think it matches the horror quite well. I do have a couple of complaints though. When I first played this game, there was occasional stuttering and the FPS wasn't properly capped by the options menu. This was thankfully fixed in future updates and worked perfectly my second playthrough onward. There is also the matter of your body. By default, you can see your body and the respective animations. However, the running animation in particular has your fist go right into your eye. I understand the purpose was immersion and all, but it does become very distracting very quickly. Thankfully, there is also an option to turn your body invisible, which is how I like it. I've never understood the obsession some people have with making sure FPS characters have bodies. The music of the game is pretty solid as well. The game isn't long, so by extension there aren't many music tracks. However, what we get is very well done. Special shout out to the Noob Noob theme and the end credit theme, We're All in This Together by D. Husta. Go check out the extended version complete with music video over on his channel. We're not done quite yet though. This game has a number of Easter eggs and secrets, and I want to talk about a few of them. First is if you go to the Frankie statue in the main lobby and click on his nose, you'll get a sound effect and achievement. This does not apply to any other appearance of this same statue, such as in the mountain lobby. Next is the Frankie plushies. Scattered about in select locations are these grungy looking plushies of Frankie holding what I think is chalk, but I like to think it's a cigarette. Some are easy to miss, and some are just on top of furniture. They respawn in their locations if you load in a checkpoint or die, but as long as you pick it up and reach a save point, it'll count as taken. All but one of them can be found in the post-game exploration. There is a single plushie in the far back of the cash prize room up on a platform. If you don't pick it up during this scene, you'll have to start the game all over again to pick it up. Once you've gotten all the plushies on a single save, you'll get an achievement for it. Speaking of finding Frankies, remember when I mentioned Good Frankie watching us? Well, you can find him all over the place. In the shadows, in the main lobby, up the catwalks, and even in secret areas. And that brings us to the last thing I want to cover in this video in terms of Easter eggs. Once you've completed the game, you can load back into a post-game version of the park. You can freely explore, but keep in mind that several scripted sections, such as the chase scenes, no longer work. Now, if you cross this police tape in the mountain lobby and head up this flight of stairs, you'll find the old CEO office. Good Frankie will be watching from the corner, but he won't have anything to say. On the desk is paperwork, which appears to be a file, probably on you, and evidence that they purchased an apartment building, probably yours. If you visit here post-game, there will be a glowing key on the chair in the corner. You can actually visit this room prior to beating the game, but the key will only appear after you've won the story. If you take this key and head back to the lobby, then one of the locked doors in the back hall will be open. Up the elevator and down a corridor will be an abandoned room, with both Frankie's and Henry deactivated against the wall. On the wall will be notes, such as how often Henry will appear in the season, or the fact Good Frankie will be replaced in the next. These notes effectively make this room a mini diegetic asset museum, which is something I'll always appreciate. And that's all I want to talk about here in terms of Easter eggs and secrets. There are more, but I feel like we're diving into a different video genre at this point. A shout out to Tetrabit Gaming here on YouTube. I don't normally watch his videos, but he has a couple of excellent behind the scenes, secrets, and boundary break videos on Finding Frankie, including one talking about cut content with dev input. They even talk about cut characters and story ideas, which explains a lot of the mismatched lore we get in game. Overall, Finding Frankie is a simple but fun experience, and it has definitely rekindled my hope that the mascot horror subgenre will find its way one day. It's not long, so just playing a full run in a couple hours on the weekend will probably leave you satisfied until the urge to play again hits. The game is available on Steam and has been ported to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S as of me writing this. I was originally planning to cover my favorite game and its less than favorite sequel this month, but the Jurassic Park Aftermath review took much longer than expected, so this game was tagged in to make up for the time. Even so, I'm not entirely convinced the December review will be ready in time, as I've decided to change how I handle review production in general. Regardless, October's video is done and is over a rail shooter arcade game that has been heavily requested, so look forward to that. I know I've definitely pushed the I'll review whatever I want rule with this one, so I thank you for your patience and support. And with that, I think I'll call it here. I'm gonna go now and buy some suspicious cereal. Bye!